So Ana Kasparian went on the PBD podcast to debate Israel and Gaza and Israel's intervention into Gaza, their seeming invasion of Gaza and soon-to-be occupation of Gaza, if the operation really goes through. And they went on to debate this issue because obviously Ana Kasparian is probably going to disagree with the host of the PBD podcast about the causes of this conflict, the foundations of what built up to this tension in the first place, and what should be done. So let's watch.
It's a freaking disaster.
Yeah.
Afghanistan, Iraq, what they're trying to do with the PLO right here. But Pat brought the biggest point to the thing. Number one, we need to be focused on America. Who are America's allies come second? Is it Israel or is it Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, the Muslim
I'll go with
Brotherhood?
Israel for 200.
What are we even talking about
Israel
right
for
here?
200.
What are we even talking about right here? Like this equivocation, especially on the woke college campus left of this, you know.
So let me jump in on this conversation because my views on it are a little more nuanced. Look, what's currently happening to Palestinian civilians. First of all, let me just get this out of the way. It's really important. I was disgusted to see anyone on the left justify or provide cover for a terrorist group like Hamas. I was horrified by what Hamas did. Absolutely, Israel should go after Hamas. I have no problem with that. Now, the way the Israeli government and the IDF is going after Hamas is basically ethnically cleansing Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Okay, look, I'm Armenian. I see genocide when I can recognize genocide when I see one. It is so obvious to me. Like, I'll give you a few examples. If you wanted to root out Hamas, you send in special ops.
I agree.
Okay, that is how you do it. And I'm not saying that as some lefty. Jocko Willink said that. Someone who is incredibly experienced in the military. He's like, this is how you get Hamas. Bombing the crap out of
When ethnic cleansing is brought up, I always have understood ethnic cleansing to be you force a population due to their ethnicity, race, etc., out of an area to then replace them with your own people or different people for whatever number of reasons. It could be political, like oh, this group doesn't vote for us or doesn't support us, so we're pushing them out. Could be more hate-filled, like oh, this group is parasitic, etc., some type of hate-filled, horrific racism. What scares me about what we have currently happening in the Gaza Strip is that the Israeli government has not clearly laid out exactly what their plan is after they take over Gaza. They have said that their goal is to eradicate Hamas, and that's most of the clarification we've gotten. And so when I see organizations that advise the Israeli government talking about what is essentially pushing out the Palestinian population permanently and having them live in tent cities in the Sinai Peninsula or in Cairo, that looks like ethnic cleansing to me. When I see people that think tanks that are headed by people that Netanyahu used to have as part of his government coming out with reports suggesting that this is a great opportunity to permanently deal with the Palestinian question in Gaza and push them out, that looks like ethnic cleansing to me. And because we don't know what the Israeli government is going to do after they occupy the Gaza Strip, this question of ethnic cleansing hangs in the air with a big question mark, as some people are hearing Israeli politicians saying second Nakba, which for Palestinians, that's in reference to the 1948 war. For Israelis, they call it the War of Independence, but Israelis call it the Nakba because over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and Nakba translates into the catastrophe. And so when you hear Israeli politicians saying this isn't going to be a second War of Independence, but a second Nakba, when you hear that type of rhetoric, it is absolutely understandable for people to raise an eyebrow and say, why are you using that type of rhetoric? I see a lot of blurring of the line of what is a civilian, what is a combatant, what is the moral culpability of the Gazan population, what happened on October 7th. And all that rhetoric is just quite scary. And so I already don't expect Israeli military culture to put a lot of respect on the lives of Palestinian civilians. I don't. Not from the conduct of Israeli soldiers in the West Bank or the conduct of Israeli soldiers responding to Palestinian protests or from the massive bombing campaign that Israel is engaged in. I think it was like a weekend they had already dropped 6,000 bombs. And so until we got some sort of clarification and commitments from the Israeli government and exactly what they're going to do in the Gaza Strip after the fact, which is something that we should expect from them if they expect our support in any sort of a military operation, especially after we saw what happened in Afghanistan and Barbara Lee's one lone vote against the invasion of Afghanistan became prophetic as she said, we don't have a plan. What do we do after we invade? That would be my comment. When you don't have a plan, everybody else is just going to fill in the blanks and listen for plans, imagine plans, try to find out what the plan is. And scarily enough people have suggested something that is akin to ethnic cleansing. Now, that's not an official statement from the government. That's not an official statement from Netanyahu, but they need to clarify.
Residential buildings, okay, out of that Greek Orthodox church, out of the areas where all of these innocent Palestinian civilians are living in or fleeing from, is not the right way to go. And look, that in the long term will not keep Israel safe, because what that policy of just bombing the crap out of that area and wiping out entire families does is it breeds more extremism. Okay. First of all, I think it's wrong. I don't think those civilians deserve this. Okay. The majority of the civilians living in the Gaza Strip weren't even born at the time that Hamas was voted in. Okay. Most of them, half of them are under the age of 18.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So the point that I'm trying to make is there is a way of supporting Israel, which I believe we should do, right, without justifying what they're currently doing in the Gaza Strip, right? We should provide them with the intel they need. We should provide them with the weapons they need, with the condition that they're going to carry out these operations, special ops, as opposed to bombing the crap out of the Gaza Strip, killing all of these innocent civilians from a remote location. I think that's wrong.
Anna, with all due respect, you're sort of falling for the mainstream narrative that you talk about railing against. So we all saw the story about the hospital that was bombed by Israel. How could you do this? How could you kill innocent civilians? The New York Times basically is now
I understand he did that to emphasize oh, they wasn't really bombed by the Israel military. He put the parentheses over the hospital. You look, one second.
Practicing do this. How could you kill innocent hospital that was?
Why did he do that over the? Was it not a hospital? That's not how you use air quotes. The way he would have used air quotes to suggest that it wasn't the Israelis would be the Israeli bombing. It wouldn't be hospital, because that suggests it wasn't actually a hospital. I don't think he knows how to use air quotes.
Bombed by Israel. How could you do this? How could you kill innocent civilians? The New York Times basically is now retracting their statement. Yeah, it turns out it was the Islamic Jihad with a failed rocket. I can assure you of
Hold
this.
on.
Nobody
that is not definitive, number one.
Yeah, it's still not.
That is not definitive,
Even
number
the Wall
one.
Street Journal came out and said
that is one example.
Okay.
Even if
it's not definitive. It isn't definitive. He said you fell for mainstream propaganda. You said that it was people thought it was this thing, but actually it's this other thing. And he's saying that with also not definitively knowing. He's making the same mistake he's criticizing the mainstream news of doing. Anyway, putting that to the side, I said this before, and I'll say it again. The hospital is going to become a red herring. It's going to, and this is what I warned against, and why I want to make sure that we cover other stories of other locations that were bombed and confirmed to be bombed by the IDF. Like, for example, the example Ana Kasparian brought here, which is the 12th century Greek Orthodox Church that services Palestine's very small Christian community, which was bombed, killing multiple people who were trying to find refuge within the walls of the church's compound. The hospital is one bombing. Israel has bombed the Gaza Strip thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times. I think it was like a week into it, they dropped 6,000 bombs. Hospital is one instance. Whether it was done by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, whether it was done by Hamas, that does not, whether it was done by the IDF, it does not change Anna's argument. And saying that she fell for some propaganda when she didn't even reference it, as far as I'm aware, just kind of seems like he needs to prove that it's actually okay to engage in this bombing and that the civilians are okay. And so he's trying to use an example where it's still blurry. But there's so many examples where it isn't, and the IDF has admitted to it, like in the Greek Orthodox Church. We don't need to pivot off to this red herring.
Even if I give you that argument and it is proven without any doubt that it was Hamas that did that, that is one incident in a situation where 1.1 million Palestinians are being told to evacuate their homes. As they're being evacuated to the part of the Gaza Strip where they're gonna be safe, that area gets bombed.
Yep.
Okay.
So let me ask you a very direct question. Do you think Israel wants to kill innocent civilians?
I do.
You think Israel genuinely wants to?
I do.
What evidence do you have of that?
The evidence is they are refusing to do special operations and instead are relying on bombing areas where they know civilians are at, and then they'll turn around and say, well, Hamas is using them as human shields.
So
I don't know. The thing is, it would not be difficult for somebody to counter Anna's argument here. If they had, I don't know if they have enough brain cells at the PBD podcast to rub together to figure this out, but all you would need to say in response to Anna, and there have been instances, let me just be clear, there have been instances where Israeli soldiers have targeted civilians, whether it be with torture, whether it be with like the burning cigarette butts on captured Palestinians in the West Bank, whether it be this isn't the IDF, but far right settlers just straight up lynching people, whether it be the sniping of protesters on the border during the protests a few years ago. There have been examples of the IDF clearly, or at least IDF soldiers clearly targeting civilians. Someone could make the argument that that's a military cultural issue and not a rules of engagement issue. Whereas in the rules of the Israeli military's engagement, I doubt anywhere it says bomb civilians. I bet somewhere it says, and this would be the main critique I would have of the IDF, loose rules of engagement. It doesn't say this exactly, but something that basically outlines loose rules of engagement that is willing to deal with a high amount of collateral damage, aka civilian casualties. All these guys would have to say to counter Anna here would be, it's not that the IDF is targeting civilians, it's that Hamas uses human shields and that they have extremely loose rules of engagement. That would be the response here. I don't know if he's going to engage in that type of response. I don't know. I think Anna could make a lot of headway, though, by not arguing that the rules of engagement say bomb civilians, but that in Israel and Israeli military culture, a disregard for civilian casualties is somewhat the norm. That is what I think she would do much better in arguing than saying Israel specifically ordered or gave an order to kill civilians here for the sake of killing civilians.
If someone was shooting at you, if someone was, you don't have kids, right?
If an armed man grabbed a family member of yours, do you have kids?
No, I don't.
Oh, do you have? Okay, your mother. You talked about your mother. If an armed gunman grabbed your mother, had a gun to her head, okay, and he is confronted by the authorities, by law enforcement. And the law enforcement, they just decide, you know what? We're not going to negotiate. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to shoot the hell out of both of them. And then they come to you and say, well, your mother, sorry, was a human shield. Would you accept that argument?
That's not the question, though.
Would you?
Now, this situation might seem a little, it's not like fanciful, but it might seem like a little out of the box here. It's not. Remember, Hamas has like 150 Israeli hostages. Not just like Israeli American, Israeli, like a ton of Israeli hostages. Some of which reportedly died due to the bombing campaign. So in a way, if Israel does not get any success out of negotiations to get these hostages released, I know that over the weekend there was some talks facilitated by Qatar between the Israeli government and Hamas over the release of these hostages. If they don't, and they end up invading, bombing, and trying to take over Gaza, and all the hostages die, then how different is it really?
Accept that argument.
You're making up a random story that what my mother is held captive.
Hamas using Palestinians as human shields is not a justification to.
Man, I think it'd be. She should just go to the Israeli hostages, but whatever, that works too.
Indiscriminately bomb the hell out of that region, knowing full well that the majority of people who are going to end up dying are not Hamas militants who are underground in the tunnels. Okay, it's the innocent civilians who are going to lose their lives. And the flippant behavior that I see from the West in regard to all of those innocent people losing their lives disgusts me, Okay, seeing people having to leave, vacate their homes, everything that they've known, being forced to leave the land that they have. That is exactly what happened to Armenians. That is exactly what happened during the genocide. And the fact that the United States is just willy-nilly providing cover for that behavior.
And the question becomes whether or not the Israeli government is going to allow Palestinians to return to northern Gaza once they occupy northern Gaza. That is when it becomes a question of genocide. And that is something the entire international community does need to keep an eye out for.
Behavior.
More than keep an eye out for, but I don't expect a UN intervention.
Absolutely disgust me. Israel has a right to defend itself. How it defends itself is where we should have that conversation. Sending special ops in to get Hamas, hell yeah, go get them. But the idea that all of these innocent kids should lose their lives as a result of this, just, I don't believe it. I will never support it. And in the long run, that is going to make Israeli civilians less safe, not more safe. It breeds more extremism. And by the way, it's dragging us into a broader war. Okay, you have the Arab world like ready to go, and you have Israel under the leadership of Netanyahu acting incredibly belligerent, doing airstrikes in freaking Lebanon. Okay, talking about going to war in Iran. We're going to bring in all of these Arab countries. You think the United States is going to stay out of that? Hell no. We're going to be dragged into more forever wars. But I just think it's so destructive, so stupid. We're not thinking critically and strategically about how to help our ally Israel while also
Dude, I want to hear these guys. I know these guys are, most of the guys in this room are Trump supporters. I want to hear them defend Trump's buckets of blood comment. For those of you who don't know, Trump said if they spill a drop of our blood, we need to spill buckets of theirs in justification, in response to the Israeli bombing campaign of Gaza, which is of the same theme that we've heard from people like Lindsey Graham when he said flatten Gaza. Tom Cotton said we needed to bounce the rubble. So, I mean, it's pretty part and parcel for the Republican Party.
Preventing the reproduction of more extremism.
Yeah, the extremism is never going to go away.
It's not going to go.
That's the foundation of what Hamas is.
It's not going to go away.
In their founding doctrine,
let me tell you something.
Their entire doctrine is to eliminate every Jew that lives in Israel.
Let me explain.
Do you acknowledge the founding doctrine of what Hamas is? The annihilation of all Jews?
Hamas.
None of that didn't answer any of her questions or any of her points. It just feels like a pivot to like Hamas is bad. Yes, Hamas said in its charter, it had like a fable about killing all the Jews. It was like I would kill them in a house. I would kill them with a mouse. I don't like the Jews, ma'am. I don't like them, Sam I am. It was just like some fable about how they didn't like the Jews and go to kill them all. Terrible, awful. Hamas's ideology is duplicitous, it's evil, it's horrible. Hamas is not the only Palestinian representative group. Fatah, there's the PLO, there's other organizations that they could work with and try to find some political settlement to the Palestinian occupation problem. They could find other release valves for the pressure that is building up to the amount of extremism that we see in the Gaza Strip. There's other alternative paths that can be followed. We know that 65% of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip did not want to break the ceasefire with Israel. We know that a decent, if not the vast majority of Palestinians do not trust or hold very little trust in Hamas. Hamas as an organization is absolutely awful, but just because something's awful doesn't mean that bombing it or occupying Gaza is necessarily going to destroy Hamas. It's an organization that is international. Its leadership is in locations like Qatar. It could flee overseas like the Taliban did before returning to Afghanistan later from Pakistan, reinvigorated, retrained with new recruits to fight a war that we eventually lost. All these things he's saying about Hamas, about their evil values and stuff, true. Very true. They don't just treat Israelis bad, they also treat Palestinians bad. Hamas is bad. But just because they're bad, that doesn't mean that a hammer or an invasion is the only possible solution or the only one that will work or will necessarily work.
Okay.
Let me be clear.
So the question is, how do we annihilate them?
Well, you can't find.
I need you guys to understand
Nobody
something.
wants to see innocent civilians killed.
Understand
Nobody,
something.
including the IDF.
If a government wiped out my entire family, I have nothing left to live for, and I'm real angry. Okay, that is a dangerous combination. And that is exactly what is being bred right now as we speak, as entire families are getting wiped out, civilian families in the Gaza Strip. I totally get that, you know, the discourse in the United States has essentially dehumanized these people. But at the end of the day, they're innocent people in a terrible situation, and they don't deserve the absolute hell that they're dealing with right now, the death and destruction that they're dealing with right now. I want a peaceful two-state solution. This ain't the way to get it.
Yeah, we are in full alignment, full agreement that we want to see zero civilian deaths. Nobody wants that. And I can assure you, the IDF, the Mossad, nobody wants civilian deaths. But we're looking for solutions here. If I'm standing in front of a human shield and I'm throwing missiles, bombs, grenades your way, and I'm trying to kill you as a civilian and your family, what would you do? If I'm trying to kill you, and I'm standing in front of a civilian, I'm trying to kill you, Anna, what would you do? Hey, we can't kill civilians. We need a peaceful situation here. Or would you shoot back?
I apologize.
No. What would you do?
No, but you are making a hypothetical that doesn't exist right now. We're talking about idea.
That's not looking good for Anna. Here's the answer. If somebody came up to me with a hostage and they were going to kill me, and the option was kill them and possibly the hostage, or I die, I'm going to kill them. That's probably what most people would do in the scenario, based in self-preservation. And if you don't think you would do that, you probably wouldn't know until you were put in that situation. That doesn't mean you can't do your best to try to protect that civilian who's a hostage. Maybe you try to shoot him like in the shoulder, so he hits the hostage in the shoulder, kills the guy. But if your self-preservation is at threat, of course people have a right to protect their self-preservation. The question is, does the IDF take proper protocols to protect civilian casualties when they engage in these types of operations? And from its recent bombing campaign in the Gaza Strip, and from the stuff it's admitted to, like the Orthodox Church bombing, I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I don't trust this government to set rules of engagement or to advise the military on what actions it should take. This government's already failed in keeping its people safe. Netanyahu's government has failed in keeping its people safe. Why should we now trust him to lead an invasion of Gaza and an occupation of Gaza?
IDF soldiers
that's literally
in the
what's
safety
going
of
on
their
right
remote
now.
location as they're dropping bombs. That is not what's happening right now.
No.
So we're not having a conversation about
What about
IDF
the 5,000 rockets that
Are you
were
going to let
fired?
me answer the question?
Let me answer. What about the 5,000 rockets that were fired on Israel that killed civilians?
Well,
so what do you do there?
This is
you
what
just
we do.
say, hey,
this
look,
is what we do.
Everything is a war crime these days, just like everyone is a bitch these days. I don't care what you call me. Israel is in the right here. What does that even, when you say Israel is in the right here, in the right here, what? Israel has a right to like fight the people who killed Israeli civilians. Israel is not in the right to occupy Palestinian land. It isn't. It just isn't. Israel is not in the right to engage in, for example, the murder of Palestinian protesters on the border. How is it in the right? When you say Israel's in the right, do you mean to invade Gaza? And if you think they're in the right, here's a question. Whether or not you feel like it's right to be able to fight back, like get back those Hamas guys, what does this lead to? What's the follow-up? Again, and I feel it. I can feel that 9/11 spirit right now. I can feel the ghost of the Twin Towers haunting this invasion. Just because something must be done doesn't mean you just do something so you can have done something. If the invasion is not going to lead to a safer existence for Palestinians and Israelis and a cessation of the cycle of violence, then what's the point? And so until I am given some sort of guideline of what the follow-up is, how could you ever expect me to sign up for such an attack? You're right on Ukraine, Dylan, but wrong on this. Your youthful idealism doesn't let you recognize what Palestinians are. Okay, so, and how do I respond to that? Honestly, it just sounds like you're old and racist. Less than I'm, young and idyllic. Again, 65% of Palestinians didn't want to break the ceasefire. Majority of Palestinians don't particularly even like Hamas. Don't particularly trust Hamas. There hasn't been an election in the Gaza Strip since 2006. The idea that, these Palestinians are just like Hamas. Oh, this is the only option. The only option is to kill, 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 kill. It's demented. It's demented. This just feels like Afghanistan. This is just 2001 again. Man, how can you tell me that those Muslims those like Muslims are cool or whatever, or that we can't, like, they only understand one language, man. We can only go do one thing. We got to do something. And we do something, and it didn't fix shit. You've watched Russian TV, Dylan. Why aren't you watching Palestinian TV? See what I already did. I know about Farfor the mouse. I know about the crazy shit that Hamas produces. I know about that. That doesn't mean that I am now going to believe, because there's anti-Semitic mice on Palestinian TV, that Palestinians don't deserve a state. The longer you deny Palestinians a state, the longer this conflict will drag on and on and on and on. Displacing more Palestinians will not bring an end to the war. It will not bring an end to the bloodshed. It will not bring an end to the conflict. It will not find a political solution. I am much more interested in ending the cycle of violence than just expanding the violence. Palestinians are the ones denying themselves a state. They will never allow themselves a state. They are raised to hate Jews. Dude, it's this fucking like childish. You said that there's the youthful idealism. How old are you? Are you older than me? If you're older than me, then you've got no excuse to say that Palestinians denied themselves a state. In what way? Because they didn't accept Israel's gracious deal of no right of return, of making the illegal settlements in the West Bank that nobody in the world fucking recognizes as Israeli territory, including in some parts Israel not even recognizing some of these settlements as Israeli territory. That if the Palestinians didn't accept that deal, they've denied themselves a state. That shit deal, which was shit. Come on, man. You're twice my age? Oh, then you've got no excuse, man. Why are you ignoring what they did with Gaza when it was given to them? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe Afghans deserve their own country? But when you give it to them, when you leave, Taliban takes over. Guess Afghanistan shouldn't exist. Come on, man. So is the idea that the Israelis need to be in the West Bank and they need to invade Gaza so they can civilize these dirty Palestinians and give them a feeling of the West, a feeling of Western civilization, and get these Jew haters in line, bring them in line, and then one day, if they're lucky, we'll give them an island in the middle of Timbuktu. Like, come on, get out of here, dog. Guess what? During Ukraine's period of oppression and occupation, hardcore nationalism and extremism was an issue. Why? Because when you have economic destitution, when you have occupation, when you have the denial of rights, people will look for things to outside of the political paradigm to try to find an escape. People will look to radical solutions when put in radical positions. And the Palestinians have been put in a very radical position for about 80 years. The fact that 1/3 of the population of Palestinians internationally, no, not 1/3, 1/3 of the internationally displaced people are Palestinians, even though they make up such a small percentage of the overall population of the earth. Are we really that surprised that they're so radicalized that they feel like there's no other option? You're assuming all cultures are equal. They're not. You can call this racism. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with Islamic fundamentalism. Dude, my country did 20 years in Afghanistan. 20 years in Afghanistan, sending our boys over there to die and dropping bombs under the idea that eventually we could, through brute force and I guess vigorous debate and investment, make it mold to our interests. I have no reason to believe, unless Israel intends to just push out all the Palestinians and engage in ethnic cleansing, that they're going to be able to, like, what? Change the... Oh, we've converted all of these Palestinians to Jews. We showed them the Torah. They were like, oh, no wonder you guys wanted to stay. This shit is fire. And then they created a Jewish Gaza. Like, what's the plan? You hear, why is the impetus on me? Let's put the impetus on you. What's the plan? You invade Gaza, then what? Because I could tell you the plan with the Ukrainians and Russia. Push out the Russians, reintegrate the territory that was annexed from them. There's the plan. There's the after. What's the after when it comes to Gaza? Anyway, let's continue. I'm done arguing with chat.
Until we identify where this is coming from,
are you going to let me answer the question?
We can't kill any civilians. Nobody wants civilians killed.
Here's what we do. Here's what we do. The United States taxpayer funds the Iron Dome that intercepts all of those rockets, okay? To pretend as though...
Also, a lot of Jews hate Palestinians, too. I just want to throw that out there, too. This idea is like, oh, you know, it's just Palestinians hate Jews. A lot of Israeli Jews hate Palestinians, too. It's a divisive conflict.
We're talking about two equal sides is ridiculous to me. It is an asymmetrical war. So I'm happy. I am so happy that the United States did that the United States helped fund the Iron Dome to help keep Israel safe. The point that I'm trying to make right now is that the current effort in basically bombing the crap out of the Gaza Strip, first of all, breaks a bunch of international laws pertaining to war. Okay, so there are war crimes taking place as we speak, and we're here in the United States pretending like we don't see it, even though every other country in the world sees it, even though the UN Security Council sees it. So aside from doing war crimes, we're also creating a future in which Israel isn't going to be safe. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, don't you think the people of Israel know that?
Then why?
They've never had safety there.
Can I say,
They've
can I
never
say one
had
thing
safety.
too? How many?
You don't think that in 2006 when they did the disengagement, they pulled out of Gaza, they weren't aware of this?
What, is this like the John Bolton security is a fantasy? Like, take Israel will just forever, a knife in one hand, a pistol in the other, and they'll just need to take what's theirs.
No doubt, this is whack-a-mole on the highest proportion. But at some point, if Hamas is leading Gaza, that is the government that is running Gaza, and their founding principle is the annihilation of everybody in Israel, what choice do you have? The IDF does not want to...
Hamas.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Go after
How do you do
Hamas.
that? Give me an actual, tangible solution.
She already said.
When they're
Special ops. That's how you
That's
do
it.
it.
Because, no,
So you just
it's-
do precision
Hold on, yeah.
while they're shooting
Precision.
missiles.
Because
Okay.
on the 6th, October 6th, what, 1,600 people died, I think a couple number. Now, in Palestine, it's over 6,000, okay? How many of Hamas have been killed in that 6,000? Do you know? There's 44,000 in Palestine. How many of them were killed?
Dude, this guy is such a knuckle dragger that the fact that we might slightly agree on this concerns me. I'm going to have like a reactionary, okay, never mind. The IDF was always right. But no. Reel myself in. Reel myself in.
Because mind you, the innocent lives are at 95%. How much Hamas? When's enough? I get it, Adam. Israel.
By the way, he does not know that. He doesn't have the numbers. I think he just threw out the 95 number random, I think. But the civilian number percentage is probably very high.
Has to protect itself, and we have to support Israel protecting itself. It didn't protect itself that day. Nobody wants to talk about it. So now, how many lives is enough? Hamas killed, and God rest all their souls.
Oh, this
1,600 people that day, raped, killed, everything.
This dude's like a conspiracy theorist. I put like $100 on what he was referring to. Nobody wants to talk about it. He probably believes that Netanyahu's government let the attack happen. which to me makes no sense. I don't know why Netanyahu would want his country, but specifically his administration, who built his legitimacy on security, to have the greatest security failure of Israel as a modern state. It wouldn't make any sense why he would sabotage himself like that.
So
how many more civilians have to die in Palestine for it to be like, all right, we killed some Hamas, but if you think you're going to wipe out all of Hamas, that's not going to happen. So now what's the solution? Just flatten Palestine. Just get everybody, pack your shit and get out, because we're bombing everything, because that's all they're using as kids as shields. I'm pretty sure that they do, but Adam, it's not everywhere. The majority of the deaths are women and children and innocent people. It's
but go deeper, Vinny. Don't just stop. No, again, let's start with the basic premise here that nobody wants innocent kids and civilians to be dying. Nobody.
Of course not.
The difference is when Hamas is literally raping and beheading children and raping women. Okay, give me a solution other than, hey, don't kill innocent civilians. Give me something. You're saying precision defense,
yeah, it's
precision
called special
like that.
forces.
Okay,
and we have those people.
When terrorists are embedded in schools, in hospitals, and in homes, how do you do this? Israel does what is about roof knocks. You've got 10 minutes to get the fuck out.
Where are they going?
10 minutes. Fuck off. Okay. We briefly touched on this during the panel last night, but I never got to get into it deep. Roof knocking is not a particularly straightforward process. If you are dropping like 1,000 to 2,000 bombs a night on Gaza, right? That's a lot of bombs to drop in a very condensed area. So constantly, all night, you're in your apartment hearing boom, 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 over and over and over. And then eventually, the building shakes a little, and you hear something hit your building. Are you immediately going to recognize that is a warning from the Israeli government? Get the fuck out? Or are you just going to be confused or think it was another bomb? In fact, I believe the ICC produced a report. I believe it was the ICC. I know somebody produced a report talking about this is this can be very confusing for residents in Gaza trying to figure out whether they need to flee or not. Either way, roof knocking is not nearly as straightforward as people make it out to be. And I've been in buildings when bombs have been passing over and missiles and stuff shake the building. It would not be hard for me to not understand what was going on exactly during the roof knock. Again, though, I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Gaza, so I haven't experienced that firsthand. So
because missiles were,
and then they get a bomb where they're going.
So at what point does the Arab countries surrounding take accountability? How many people is Egypt taking in? How many people is Jordan taking in?
How many people is Lebanese taking in? Israel taking in? What are you talking about?
You want Israel to take in Gaza civilians? Do you know how many times when
but they won't
Gazans
do that,
are
right?
sick?
Because they like to conflate Hamas and innocent Palestinian civilians.
Okay, so here's my question.
Because they're subhuman.
How about this? Answer this question. How many people is the West Bank or Gaza? How many Israelis are they taking in to show support?
Are you
Zero in the history of their country.
You want to talk?
Zero.
Are you sure you want to talk about the West Bank right now?
Hundreds,
the West
if
Bank,
not thousands,
where they are governed by the Palestinian Authority, which works with the Israeli government, right? They are not at all governed by Hamas. At the same time, Israeli government has no problem with the settlers raining terror on those people living in the West Bank, right? Netanyahu has no problem with building illegal settlements in the West Bank, okay? Evicting Palestinians from their legal homes in the West Bank. By the way, honestly answer this question, okay? You have Palestinians following the rules, they're governed by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, a situation that could lead to peaceful relations between Israelis and Palestinians.
Oh, really? All the peaceful relations that have never existed?
No.
So you're going on the premise that somehow in this magical world that Anna's living in, that peace is possible. Zero peace is possible.
Building illegal settlements.
Dog, it just sounds like John Bolton. I doubt he'd like that comparison, but it just sounds like John Bolton right now. International rule-based order, my ass. Get a knife, get a pistol, and get to it.
In the West Bank, which again is not governed by Hamas, shows the bad faith of the current Israeli government.
Yeah, but it's not
in trying
whether
to
it's
create
Yitzhak
peaceful
Rabin, whether it's
relations.
Bibi Netanyahu, whether it's Ehud Barak. Good luck trying to have peace with Hamas.
I just wish that you would just say it like it is, because I feel like you're not saying it like
Tell me
it
what
is.
I'm not saying.
I think Israel wants to rid that area of Palestinians, period. And their activity in the Gaza Strip right now makes it abundantly clear to me. Abundantly clear.
Listen, if there's anybody
Abundantly clear. Okay, well, remember that. Remember that statement from Anna. Right? Somebody write that down.
that
As a prediction.
understands,
entire neighborhoods completely leveled. Okay. By the way, you want to talk about bombing hospitals? You think that was the first time a hospital was bombed? They bomb hospitals all the time.
And ask yourself
that
why.
exact hospital was bombed just like a few days earlier.
okay, this alleged hospital that was bombing.
It was.
What is alleged hospital? This is like, at first it was the area, alleged. I mean, alleged hospital. Was it not treating people? Was it not acting as a hospital? It'd be one thing if he was saying it was that Hamas was using the hospital for operations, because that is something Hamas has done and it's something Hamas would do. But he's just like saying it's not a hospital, alleged hospital. What does that even mean? It was a hospital.
According to multiple reports, according to multiple retractions, was done by Islamic Jihad. But ask yourself this question: why would they be bombing hospitals? Why? Why? Because they want to see sick, innocent people die? No, because it continue to remind you that's where Hamas basically embeds themselves.
So you're saying it's worth bombing it if two Hamas guys are in a hospital? You saying it's cool to bomb the shit out of that thing?
Where are you getting two Hamas guys?
Hold on.
No.
Hold on.
If they're firing rockets and missiles from that hospital.
No, hold on. There was no rockets shot from that hospital. What I'm saying is, how many Hamas people are just, let's say they're in there. Let's say they're in there with guns. You're going to bomb the whole hospital and wipe everybody out, kids with cancer, to take out, let's say 5 or 10 Hamas. That's where she's making a point. It's special forces, and let's not pretend like they don't have some amazing special forces in Israel, and we can support, because we help them as well, Adam. It's like, when is enough? That's what I know what she's saying.
So for us to wrap it up, and I love the fiery exchange you guys are having, but I will say this to you. I don't blame you for feeling the way you do. Your family's from Israel. You're Jewish. Of course, you're going to have affinity to your community, your family, 100%. Two, the ally in the Middle East is Israel. That's it. We don't have as many powerful allies as Israel. We have other allies, but not at the level of Israel that we have. Three.
Okay, can I just say quickly? It's so strange. It's so fucking strange to be somebody who's so focused on the war in Ukraine, hearing commentators who will say, oh, the war in Ukraine costs too much. It's all a money laundering scheme. It's an endless war. We don't want to supply an endless war. But then we're talking about Israel and Palestine. And then all of a sudden, this conflict has been going on since before 1948. Oh, this isn't an endless war. This is our most important ally in the Middle East. We need to give them endless guns, bombs, supplies, whatever they ask for, they need as courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer. You know, religion is the most obvious explainer for me, because I know the evangelical community loves them some Israel. They love the land of Judah, man. They love it, love it, love it. And Donald Trump's base is largely evangelical. They make up a big portion of the Republican Party. They carry a lot of weight, both when it comes to the votes and financially. That's the only explanation I can wrap my mind around.
You know, when you do kill 5,000, let's just say you get 40, 50, 100, 200, let's just say you got 500, 10% is Hamas. Let's just throw that number out of their 40,000. The other 45,000, those families are never going to forget it. Trust me. I'm a byproduct where I'm at right now at 45 years old financially because somebody offended my dad 20 years ago in front of my face. And I'm never going to forget that. I'm going to go till I die to make sure they're going to remember my dad's last name till the day I die.
Love it.
They're going to have to. So imagine at this small level of where I'm going, my fires come out. I don't need another $300-400 million. That's not what I'm doing this for. I know those people that lost family. This cycle's not going to go away. It's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20. Maybe it's not going to happen under Netanyahu's watch. Matter of fact, it's not going to happen on Netanyahu's watch, but it is going to happen under another person's watch. Now, the war, you know, is this thing ever going to stop? It's been going on for thousands of years. We're going to be able to stop it now?
I hate this premise. I really do. It's ahistorical the idea that the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis was going on for thousands of years. Before 1900, like in the 18th century, there wasn't like some big conflict between the Jews that were left in Jerusalem and the local Muslim community. That was like I assume there was like people arguing with merchants or whatever. I don't know. But the conflict we see today didn't exist. The conflict we see today is the result of Zionism and anti-Zionism. Those are the primary causes. It is the fact that there was the Zionist project of Jews coming back to this land and creating a state for them after the aftermath for World War II, and Jews being systematically exterminated in death camps with their children sent up in chimney smoke, deciding that they needed a state where they could defend themselves and create and manage their own affairs outside of the interference of the Russians who pogromed them, or the Spanish who pogromed them, or the Germans who exterminated them, or the Italians who helped them. That they deserve to have a land, and having a land so tied culturally and historically to the Jewish community in Israel, in Palestine, that was the Zionist project. And then now that's not all of the Zionist project, but basic runner. And anti-Zionism. The people who lived there when the Zionists came and then saw their land in the communities getting purchased up, started seeing the percentage of Jews rising in the local community, and then violence and friction between the local Palestinians and the Israelis through bombings, through murders, through theft and looting and inter-community violence. That is when the modern wave of violence and this conflict started. It's in the early like 1910s, 1920s. That is the time period when it really started. 1880s, if we're talking about Theodore Herzl, like popularizing Zionism. It is not thousands of years old, because when you hear that, what the conclusion you fall to, and I hate this conclusion, is the Jews and the Muslims are just going to be killing each other forever, man. Like, why? Like, it is what it is. Like, every few years, we're going to have to all sit around and watch as the Jews and the Muslims all shoot each other. And I don't like that. I don't like that conclusion. As if violence is a bygone conclusion and they will forever be like locked in endless bloody conflict that will take fathers and sons away from the dinner table forever. I disagree with that. If you treat violence as it is inevitable, then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The military side of saying, going from the way that Jack was talking about, yes, I mean, they have this underground thing that's so massive and strategic. It's freaking ridiculous. There's a video you can actually go see it, where the guy from Fox News went to the bottom. They actually gave him a tour of it. I don't know if you've seen this or not, what this looks like. It's so it's very interesting how much time they put into it.
Underground city.
It's
built by terrorists.
So again,
and we're wondering how we have to be very careful here with these cities.
But also, if I were to ask the motive of Netanyahu, when I asked the pilot, the Israeli pilot, you know which one I'm talking about, Vinny?
Yeah.
When I asked him, he says, honestly, if you want to ask me, I don't want us to take any refugees. Nobody. I want us to be 100% Israeli Jews.
I remember.
That's what I want Israel to be. I want nobody else there. By the way, there's nothing wrong with you believing that.
That's fine.
But that's who you are. That's what you believe in. Great. Go for it.
If you go bomb and displace people and then take none of the refugees, you're shit. That's my position. If you go bomb, destroy things, kill people, and then don't take any refugees or try to deal with the rebuilding efforts, you're shit. That's my opinion.
There's some people in America don't want anybody else to come in here. That doesn't make it right or wrong. It's their belief, what they're thinking about. So where this is going to go next, again, America first is the following. This is my concern. This comes back down to the southern border. A couple of these guys are like, oh, you want to do that? No problem. Iran has vengeance. They're just looking for an excuse. People coming down here, they're looking for an excuse. 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're having a regular day. Kind of like the day you got a text that Kobe Bryant died and none of us believed it. Kind of like when all of a sudden 9/11 happened. Nobody expected it. We're going to have something like that happen.
Is it going to... Did he just compare 9/11 to Kobe Bryant dying? Wow. You're really up there as a celebrity if, like, the death of 3,000 people can be compared to the death of one man. About the same impact. think 9/11 and Kobe Bryant's death probably, when it comes to like the history books, they're gonna get about the same amount coverage, I think.
And then that person's going to scream back and say, remember what you did to us 15 years ago?
Know, there was 9/11.
This is what you're getting for this.
There was 9/11, and then there was 9/11-2, also known as Kobe Bryant's death.
My concern is that. So if we had a stronger president that could impose fear on all of them collectively, maybe they would tone it down a little bit. But unfortunately, there's not a strong leader in charge that can get everybody to say, relax and tone.
By the way, this wouldn't work either. Trump had 4 years in office to try to deal with this conflict. Well, he thinks it's endless, so he probably would just for this. I don't know. He sent his peace plan to the Palestinians was unbelievably insulting. It was like, okay, how about the Israelis get all this internationally recognized Palestinian land, and in exchange, you get a little strip in the middle of the desert with nothing in it. Oh, and a tunnel to Gaza, so you can't pass through Israel. You have to use an underground tunnel. Isn't that great? Oh, and you guys don't get a military. In fact, we actually control security affairs for you guys. They're gonna sign? Like, no, of course they didn't sign.
Tone it down. You can be in a room, fight breaks out. One person that everybody in that room fears says, guys, chill out, stop, not right now. Everybody stops. That one person is not Joe Biden. It doesn't exist in the world today. We're going to unfortunately keep out.
That person doesn't exist, period. There's no such thing as just being a super strong leader. Because you're strong, nobody does anything, and then the weak leader came in, so everybody did everything. That's not a thing, right? Yeah, I would like to hear him like say the policies that go with strength. Joe Biden sent 2 aircraft carriers to the region. Joe Biden has troops ready to deploy in the region at a moment's notice. He sent over artillery show. What stronger of a response should he have given to send this message?
These conflicts. By the way, we think we're done with this.
It's just like a buzzword. A strong president, weak president.
Election's going to happen. They got 12. Think about what the opportunist people are thinking about. The regimes. I have 12 more months to invade somebody until, God forbid, somebody else gets elected. Because I know I can't do it under Trump. What happened the day Reagan got elected? That day, what did Iran do? What did Khomeini do? Release prisoners. They're like, whoo, we'll mess with Carter. We ain't scared of Carter.
Yeah.
We are not effing with Trump.
Yep.
That is not why they released it. That is not at all how that happened. Okay, whatever. I disagree with their historiography. PBD Podcast. Interesting as ever.